That way, just for the safety of our whole family.
It's not like the other years, so it's going to be tough, I guess.
Preparations are underway in Puerto Rico as Hurricane George closes in. Food supplies and building materials are in demand as residents prepare for the storm. Welcome to this edition of Weather Center. I'm Dan Atkinson.
And I'm Lisa Moser. We'll have the current conditions across the U.S. in just a moment. But first, for the latest details on Hurricane George, let's join Jim Cantori in the Forecast Center. Jim?
Thank you, Lisa. And Dan, no doubt folks already dealing with the hurricane in Antigua and St. Kitts. They've had reports of winds over 100 miles an hour. Also some damage that's ripped off some roofs there. The good news is on this report there were no immediate reports of injuries. So hopefully all is well at Antigua and St. Kitts. But the storm is moving west. As a matter of fact, the eye is almost right over St. Croix as we speak. Let's look at the latest advisory on this, and we'll talk more in depth about it and even go to the National Weather Service in Puerto Rico to find out what's going on there. Here's the 11 a.m. advisory from the Hurricane Center. We should have another one in about 55 minutes or so, but you can see what's happening here. Winds are 110 miles an hour, pressure's at 971, and it's about 110 miles or so east-southeast of San Juan at that time. So it's continuing to move on off toward the west, and as a result of that, we have hurricane warnings up for the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, the Dominican, Antigua, Barbuda, and now watches have been posted for the north coast of Haiti and also into the southeastern Bahamas. Well, you can see what's going to be happening as a result of this. We've already had some great news regarding the state of emergency. President Clinton has approved that, and now it is declared for the U.S. Virgin Islands and also Puerto Rico. More than 10,000 people, actually this is updated too, we have reports now of 12,000 people which have moved into shelters across the Northwest Caribbean. And that's the results of the shelters. About 300 of those that are open right now. As we continue on, the National Guard troops will be helping on, patrolling streets and evacuating residents. All that should pretty much be completed. Their jobs now are just to patrol and make sure everybody stays indoors. And the power has been turned off in St. Thomas and St. Croix for safety precautions there. Joining me now from San Juan, Puerto Rico at the National Weather Forecast Office, Matt Bragaw, who is a meteorologist there. Matt, what kind of weather are you dealing with on Puerto Rico right now, especially in San Juan?
Well, the winds are starting to pick up. Have been picking up over the past couple of hours. So they're now gusting up to 30 miles an hour, both at San Juan and Roosevelt Roads Naval Station. Latest obs we have from St. Thomas has their winds gusting over 40 miles an hour. At the moment, the eye of the hurricane is parked right on top of St. Croix.
And what are you fearing for Puerto Rico? What are you telling folks there?
We're telling them to prepare for the worst. It looks like, for all indications, that the storm is going to track from the southeast corner of the island across to the northwest part of the island, which is going to put the most populous parts of the island on the strongest side of the storm.
And as far as wind gusts so far across the islands, either officially or unofficially, what have you recorded as the highest, or heard of the highest wind gust?
The highest we've seen so far is one of our observers at St. Croix has reported wind gusts of 74 miles an hour at 10:30 this morning. We've been unable to contact people in St. Croix for the past couple of hours, however.
All right, Matt, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate the latest coming out of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and they're pretty close to tropical storm force winds. Dr. Steve Lyons joins us now. He's our hurricane expert, and they're going to obviously go downhill as the afternoon goes on.
They sure are. The strongest winds are now really approaching St. Thomas, even though St. Croix is in the eye. The northern eye wall is the strongest portion of the storm, and that's affecting St. Thomas, and that's going to roll into eastern Puerto Rico later this afternoon and early this evening.
Well, we've got visible satellite imagery here we can go to, and what I'm going to do is actually zoom on this picture so we can really get an idea of where we're at. This, again, St. Croix, and even though we don't have the kind of eye that we had 2 days ago, Steve, still an eye nonetheless, and we can see it a lot better on radar in a moment.
That's right. There's definitely a precipitation void on the radar, roughly right in this area, and of course it's right over St. Croix. The strongest winds appear to be up in this area in the northern eye wall, and of course that's right in the vicinity of the St. Thomas area, and that's what our forecaster in San Juan, Puerto Rico is talking about. The track should be generally like this, which would put the most populated portions of Puerto Rico, the San Juan area, in the northern eye wall.
So they'll be getting into that, do you think, in the next 6, 7 hours, you think?
Yeah, the tropical storm force winds will encroach on San Juan in another 3 hours or so, and then beyond that, probably early this evening to mid-evening, they should be probably in the heart of the hurricane.
Now we have a colored infrared satellite picture we can talk about here, and again you're looking at Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and there's some pretty intense red colors there. What is that telling us?
Yeah, the hurricanes typically undergo a series of bursts of deep convection, and you saw a burst here right there, big burst of convection. Now it's sort of flared out a little bit, and it'll regroup and do it again. So that's associated with heavy thunderstorm activity. This hurricane is not going to weaken. The National Hurricane Center has it as a minimal Category 3 over Puerto Rico. Right now it's 1 mile an hour shy of that. That's really a trivial difference. It's really very, very close to major hurricane impact on Puerto Rico.
And this is the Doppler radar out of San Juan, and as Matt mentioned, you know, the eye is right over St. Croix right now.
Yeah, and to keep in mind, the strong wind radii and the bad weather extends out into this ring, right. Even though the center is right here near St. Croix. Probably the strongest winds of all are in that rain band, and also just in the southern St. Thomas area there.
So the southeast side of St. Thomas really in for a pounding from this.
Probably
Perhaps
so.
even worse so than St. Croix.
Probably so. We'll have to wait and see from the observations. We haven't gotten any since the power's out there in the last couple of hours.
And then eventually, as you mentioned, the track off to the west keeps this area pounding the northern side and the heavy populace.
Right, northeast flow over the northern portions of Puerto Rico would make the surge largest in San Juan and in the populated areas along the beaches there and near the airport.
Well, again, as Steve mentioned, this isn't just a point on the map. It's a large area being affected. You can see the extent of the tropical storm force winds. And, you know, now that we've seen this position actually move, you can probably start extending these winds, both of them, a little bit farther off toward the west. And when do you think they'll actually have hurricane force winds in Puerto Rico?
Probably in another 5 hours or so they'll have hurricane force winds on the southeast coast, maybe a little bit sooner, but tropical storm force winds in San Juan probably within 3 hours, at least gusts of tropical storm force.
And your words to those folks making any kind of last-minute preparations?
I think I've been absolutely circulation tracks over Puerto Rico, and I think that's what saves the lives. We have not seen anybody with loss of life yet. I hope that statistic holds true.